Hi everyone, this is a quick video on how to answer question 1 and 2 on section B, writing on the EDUQAS paper 2 GCSE English language exam. So when you've opened your question paper, if you've practiced some of the reading questions in section A, they all came first. Section B, remember, is the writing section on this paper. And it's different from paper 1 because you will get 2 questions to answer, not just one. If you remember, for paper 1, you are asked to write a short story and you get to choose one of the 4 prompts. And that short story is worth 40 marks in total. Whereas in paper 2, you can see here, it's actually the 40 marks are split over 2 questions. So you get 2 different attempts to gain those 40 marks. You must answer, and I cannot stress this enough, you must answer both of the questions. A lot of people run out of time in this question because they spent too long on the reading. If you're somebody that likes writing, it might be an option for you to perhaps do the writing section first and then go on to the reading section, whatever works for you. Okay, so I'll just briefly go through what it'll say on the exam paper. So it'll say this section, you're being assessed for the quality of your writing skills. So for each question, 12 marks are awarded for the communication and organisation of your writing. And then the 8 marks, the remaining 8 marks, are awarded for your vocab, your sentence structure, your punctuation, your spelling and your grammar. So think of it as in 12 marks are for the content and 8 marks are for the spag. Okay, so it tells you to think about the purpose and the audience for your writing before you start writing, which I know that you're all going to do anyway, because that's the first thing you do, isn't it? Before you write anything, you figure out why are you writing, who are you writing to, and what are you writing. It also recommends that you should try and write about 300 to 400 words for each task. And as I highlighted earlier, you must answer both questions. You don't have to do them in order. If you fancy doing question 2 first, which is writing a talk, writing a speech, no problem. Or maybe you want to write your guide first, which is practicing question 1. Totally up to you. So obviously I'm not going to write a perfect example for you because that doesn't exist. What could gain you high marks could look really differently across all sorts of different responses. I'm just going to give you my tips for tackling this question. So really, you should be leaving yourself an hour to do this section B. And what I would do is I would split that hour up in half. So I would spend half an hour on question 1 and half an hour on question 2. Now that for me would look like 25 minutes writing and 5 minutes proofreading for each question. Bearing in mind though, if you're somebody that plans, you're going to have to factor in 5 minutes for planning somewhere. All right. Okay, so let's look at question 1. You have been asked to write a lively piece for your college magazine called A Guide to Keeping a Pet. Write your guide, 20 marks. Okay, now a couple of things. If you see this word lively, and it is common in the EDUQAS questions, all it means is that your tone can be informal. You can use humour. For example, you can use more informal language. It doesn't have to be really, really formal. If I look at the who, what, the why, the where, so remember the first thing you should do is the purpose, audience, and the format. So I might just do, my plan would be my purpose, audience, and my format. Right, okay, so why am I writing this? It's a guide to keeping a pet. Now, a guide is usually information, isn't it? So it's going to be like a how-to. So this is going to be to inform people. Okay, so it's going to be a, oops, I'll not do that in capitals. So it's going to be a to inform. Now, my audience, let's have a look. It says it's for a college magazine. So if it's a college magazine, that means students, doesn't it? Yeah. And the format, what does it tell me to write? It's telling me to write a guide. Now, what on earth is a guide? So think about a set of instructions, maybe a how-to. Now, what springs to mind when I think of a how-to? I think of maybe like a question and answer kind of format. What's the best kind of pet for me? and then an answer to that. Maybe set it out like almost like it's a bit of an interview. It'll structure that quite nicely as well. So you could maybe talk about different sections, or maybe you want to use subheadings to organise your guide. That would be a good thing, wouldn't it? Maybe your first subheading could be what kind of pet to buy, and then you could maybe talk about what kind of pets you think people could buy. Maybe you want to just make it really, really specific from the outset, and you've decided if it's a guide to keeping a pet, yours is going to be a guide to keeping a cat, or a guide to keeping a rabbit, or a dog, or a fish, or whatever it is that you want. Maybe it's going to be a guide to keeping a tortoise, seeing as we've been talking about Charles Darwin and his Galapagos tortoises. It's completely up to you. Talk about something preferably though that you have experience of. If you don't have any experience of keeping a 6-foot monitor lizard as a pet, don't talk about it in the guide because you'll just find it really difficult. If you've got a dog or a cat or a fish or a rabbit, choose a pet that you've got, or perhaps a pet that your mate's got. If you don't have a pet, well, then you are going to have to use your imagination. But subheadings might be a good way to structure this. So it could be what kind of pet. Then maybe the next subheading could be the food. The next subheading could be exercise. The next subheading could be playtime, and structure it like that. And you write a short paragraph, but one that is full of detail on each of those things. Yeah, or like I said, maybe you could do it in a Q&A kind of format, which is a very similar thing. Completely up to you. Because we're writing for students, maybe we could talk about things that would appeal to students. What's the best kind of pet for a student to have? Is it a cat who will laze around with you while you're trying to do your revision? Or is a cat really annoying when you're trying to do that because they want to stand on your keyboard all the time? Is it going to be a dog? Is it going to be a fish because they're no trouble and they don't really do anything? And then to inform, remember, if we're writing to inform, we're going to give personal examples. So we could give anecdotes or examples of our experience of keeping pets, or our friends or our family or whatever. But we could also use facts, we could use statistics. And remember, they don't have to be real facts or statistics because you're not going to have access to Google in an exam, so you can just make them up. Nobody cares whether they're real. All you're doing is you're showing the examiner that you understand that in an informative text, there would probably be some facts or statistics. So once you've figured out this bit, we know why we're writing, we know who we're writing to, and we know what we're writing, so we know how to lay it out. You can now start to think about what you're going to write in each paragraph. Remember, we want ideally at least 4 different paragraphs if we want to, of a decent length, if we want to try and hit this word count of at least 300. But again, like it is in the reading, my advice is to make sure you give yourself at least 25 minutes to write. Then wherever you're up to on 25 minutes, you need to end it, do some proofreading for 5 minutes, and then move on to the next question. There's no point in writing a fantastic, amazing response to question 1 and taking an entire hour to do it and then not answering question 2, because as you can see, you're going to lose half of the marks for the question. Okay, let's have a look at the second question. Research has estimated that 130,000 dogs are abandoned and need rehoming each year in the UK. People must start adopting dogs as pets rather than buying them from breeders. Okay, and then your task is here. Write a talk you could deliver to your peers, giving your opinions on the subject. Okay, so you've got a statement there, haven't you, really? Now you can decide whether you agree with that or not. It's up to you, because it just says giving your opinion. So it's up to you whether you agree or not and what you want to talk about. But we need to do the same thing that we did for the other question. We need to figure out our purpose, our audience, and our format before we write anything. Now, I know the first thing I see there, it told me to write a talk. So I know that that's going to be the format that my writing's going to take. And a talk, what does that mean? It just means that, it just means that you are going to write a speech. yeah, which we've all practiced. Speeches, what do we need in order to write a speech? Think of the layout of a speech. It's usually a title, isn't it? Yeah, and then it just needs to be paragraph. So actually that's quite nice and easy. What is our purpose? Why are we writing this? Giving your opinion. What do you think? Is it to inform? Is it to persuade? Is it to entertain? Is it to describe? Is it to instruct? Is it to advise? What do you think it is? I think it's to inform, because it says give your opinion. However, because it's a speech, there might be an element of persuasion in there as well, especially if we're going to be getting quite passionate about this. We might want to use some persuasive language features in order to make people agree with our opinion on that topic. And finally, our audience, well, it says our peers, doesn't it? So people among your age group, people who you generally hang around with. So try and make your arguments, if you are going to try and persuade somebody, make them relevant to the people that you're writing to. What are you interested in? Because your friends or your peers will probably be interested in the same sorts of things. Okay. Now, you can also, in this question, you can use the statement there to sort of help you a little bit. What you shouldn't do, what you should never, ever, ever do, though, is start the speech. I am writing a speech about the statement, and I agree totally with it. You should never write anything like that, because what do you mean, the statement? Remember, this is asking you to write a speech that you could deliver to your peers. So let's imagine that this is the real. Your peers haven't seen that statement, have they? So they've no idea what you're talking about. You have to write the text of a speech that you would actually deliver. Remember, imagine that you have just walked into a room. What is the first thing that you would say if you had to give a speech? It would probably be hello, wouldn't it? You're probably going to say, hi, everybody. Hi, guys. My name's Michelle, and I'm here to talk to you today about my opinion on adopting dogs as pets. Or I'm here today to talk to you about buying dogs as pets and why I don't think you should be going to breeders. If you feel that you can be a bit more sophisticated than that, you could start with maybe a rhetorical question, for example. Hello, everybody. How many people in this room own a dog? Raise your hands. Keep your hand up if you bought your dog from a breeder. Lots of you, I can see, have bought your dog from a breeder. Can I have a show of hands of how many people adopted their dog from a rehoming centre? I can see that's a lot less. Okay, I'm here today, hopefully, to try and change your mind here and convince you that you should be, if you want to buy a furry friend, that you should go to a rehoming centre instead of going to a breeder. And here's why. And that would be my introduction. Okay, I wouldn't start with, yeah, I don't think that you should buy a dog from a breeder, because you need to give a little bit of context. Imagine there's an audience in front of you and you've got to engage them straight away. So you need to say hello in some way. You need to tell them who you are. You need to get them engaged and interacting with you straight away. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so that's maybe the sort of thing I would start with, a rhetorical question, or I would just say, hi everyone, my name's Michelle and I'm here today to talk to you about, and then at least we've got the convention of a speech there. It's clear to the examiner who's reading it that you are attempting to show them that you're writing a speech. Okay. You might want to use the statistic that's there. 130,000 dogs are abandoned every year and need rehoming. You could use more facts and statistics. And again, like I said, for question 1, just make them up. It doesn't matter if they're true or not. And again, we're looking for about 4 different paragraphs that are nice and detailed, that contain examples, personal examples or anecdotes. And again, they don't have to be real. You can make them up. You can write from whatever perspective you want. You could pretend that you are somebody giving a speech to your peers, but you actually work part-time or you volunteer part-time at a dog shelter. What do they have in Rotherham? Is it the dogs, not the Dogs Trust, the Rotherham Dog Rescue? Maybe you can tell your peers that you volunteer at Rotherham Dog Rescue on a weekend, and that's how you know all this stuff. And you've seen how many dogs come in there all the time, and you think it's awful. And you're going to use lots of emotive language and lots of persuasive language devices to try and convince your peers during this speech of why you think people should adopt pets instead of buying them. Of course, you may have the other view. You may think that we shouldn't adopt pets from rehoming centres. You might not even think rehoming centres should exist. Maybe you're somebody that thinks that dogs like that who are abandoned should be euthanized. Perhaps you don't think we should be breeding dogs at all anymore, and people shouldn't be keeping dogs as pets at all for whatever reason. Maybe the main reason is because 130,000 of them end up in rehoming shelters. It's completely up to you. But make sure you figure out the purpose, the audience, the format, and just have a little think about what you are going to be writing in each of your 4 paragraphs. Remember, the more detail, the better. The more detail, the more depth, the more convincing this is, the more marks that you're going to get off the 20 that are available. Make sure you write for at least 25 minutes. You then should have your 5 minutes to proofread, and that will be your hour up for section B. So answer both questions, figure out your purpose, audience, and format. You can tackle the questions in any order that you like, but make sure you pay attention to the keywords. So lively, it's for a college magazine. It's a guide to keeping a pet. It's a talk. It's to your peers. You're giving your opinions on the subject. Okay, so if you're going to have a go at this question, I would set yourself a timer now of 30 minutes. Choose which question you're going to have a go at first, and have a go at that question. 25 minutes writing, 5 minutes proofreading.